The amazing rehearsal of getting back into the fold with Toto. They're not an ordinary band. Everyone knows that. But I had to share this with you. Shannon Forrest talks about what it took to get him back in the fold, but more importantly, the practice. Greg Phillinganes, of course, who was Michael Jackson's musical director and has worked with so many different people, and the genius of him on keys. But it's an interesting story on how Toto got ready for this tour. Some of it is a headlining tour. Some of it is touring with Journey on Rock History Music. Judson, McKinney, and the Wanderers is a brand new band from Shannon Forrest and Judson. In the second half of this interview, you'll hear about them. Links to their music in the description.
By the way, are you guys going to record anything with Toto on the road? You know,
I know that's a question, and I couldn't even begin to tell you because Toto is so unique in the way they do things, man. People would think, okay, well, there's a change in the band. Now, of course, I was there for 6 years, so it's not like I'm coming in cold, you know. But we rehearsed 4 days to get ready on this thing, you know, like that's it, you know. Phillinganes amazingly came. He had 2 days notice before rehearsals to come into rehearsals and only have 4 days. And the fourth day of that rehearsal, we cut off early because Greg ended up winning an Emmy that night, and he had to split for the Emmys. So basically, Toto rehearsal looked like we ran half the tunes the first day. Greg is fucking incredible. Never seen anything like it. He has photographic memory and perfect pitch. So the hardest tune that we had added to the set, or most complex arrangement anyway, you know, was the first thing we ran down, and he's got an iPhone. Okay, hey man, give me 5 minutes, you know, like, and he's listening to his iPhone, and like people take for granted, it's like he's not just nailing the transitional moves and the arpeggiating things that stick out. He's nailing the exact voicing that Page has internally, and Dave does. He's a very unique guy in how he moves chords with minimal movement. You know what I mean? That's kind of part of his feeling. It's like he plays the changes inside the pinky and thumb a lot. So just know that Greg is just immediately like, nah, nah, nah. And then 5 minutes later, we play the hardest tune that's been added perfectly. You know what I mean? You know, and I can see Luke, you know, he's stressing out about kind of where we are because these last minute changes are happening, and are we going to be able to do? And I can see that stress just kind of melt, you know what I mean? Because like, oh, we just played the hardest thing we had to learn, you know, in 15 minutes. So, okay, all right. So my point is, we ran half the songs the first day, half of them the second day. We played the set twice the third day, but like full pads, you know what I mean? Like straight through twice, and then one time, and that's ready for a tour. You know what I mean? It's what I say, what I love about those guys and that experience is that. But to your question, we had so little time, there was no discussion of anything, you know, kind of beyond that, you know.
Okay, Josh wrote, we're really excited to have you back. What drum kit are you using? He wanted to know about your equipment.
Yeah, I'm using the same set of drums for now. You know, the call came in, you know, to get something made requires specific for a tour. I will bring something visually new to the tour, you know. This set of drums that I played on the 40th anniversary, you know, I played them in 18 and 19 with the guys. That set of drums for the nerd side of things is well, you're a drummer, right? I played Gretsch drums for forever. You know what I mean? Was never an artist for them. Pearl, a handful of years back, started making their own version of that shell, and they killed it. I mean, I have an 81 Gretsch kit, you know, and I can put drums inside the Pearl kit, and you cannot distinguish a difference. As a matter of fact, the Pearl drums are a little better because they ring out a little more, but tonally and response-wise, they're the same. So I'm playing that set again, which is a maple gum shell. I'm playing slightly bigger toms because I've been on that. So for my rack toms, which would usually be a 10-inch, a 12-inch, and a 13, which is the same thing Jeff played, I'm playing a 12, a 13, and a 14 in the same spots, you know. And this time around, at least in some of the shows, I'm actually, which is new, is a new place for me to go. I'll be taking some soloing, you know what I mean, which is just not something that anybody's seen me do yet. So you'll really get a taste of where I'm at with that and what those drums are doing, you know, kind of in that moment. I mean, a lot of what I do is about sound and note and volume and dynamics, and that set of drums is remarkable. Our front of house guy was just kind of jaw dropping, like, we're going, dude, just wait till that's in the big room, man. It's going to be nuts, you know. So that's it. Paiste cymbals. Right now I'm using the same setup as I did before, which are dark energy crashes and a couple of modern essential ride cymbal, hi-hat, and a China. I may change some of that out, but it's subject to availability from Paiste. So for those guys knowing, that's what that is. Remo heads, ambassadors on everything, and I have my own stick that I didn't do any stumping for. That's a really good design. This innovative percussion makes my stick, and you know, a lot of drummers get off in this esoteric thing of trying to design a stick that like, well, I mean, I don't need it to play backwards. You know what I mean? Like it's my design was about what's happened is that new growth wood, that fast growth wood that they're using, that they harvest for making things, it's much less dense than wood even from the 90s was, right? So my stick weight for an 8A, which I've always used, the stick weight was starting to drop to the 10 or 15% sometimes in overall weight. So my stick design redistributes some mass toward the front of the stick, so you get the fulcrum feel of a heavier stick with a lighter weight. You know, so if people want to check that stick out, it's not a self-indulgent crawl up my ass thing. It's addressing a design flaw that's due to the change of the nature of wood. So that's a cool thing. Yeah.
Last Man Standing. You guys are so synchronized when you're playing together. Like that's the first thing I thought. I'm going, God, there's just like on this, the like two sides of the same brain. Tell me about that tune.
Well, we were sitting out and I think we were picking up your boy, right? And like sitting out in the parking lot, and we started coming up with the chorus, I think, for Last Man Standing. And you know, Shannon sometimes would just come to me and he'll be like, "Hey man, could you write a song like this?" And he had mentioned the phrase "last man standing." You know, we talk about westerns and all kinds of different things, and he said, what about a tune like that?" And in that parking lot, it started manifesting, and then we came back and ended up like superimposing it off of something else we'd written, and it just started coming together.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. Back to the thing because if that piques your interest, what I believe is groundbreaking and fearless in what we've done, and Judson's willingness to do it, like the writing session is on camera. You know what I mean? So if you want to go, well, where'd that come from? Well, there is an actual, now it's deep dive, you know what I mean? It's a deep dive, but it exists on the channel. But a very interesting thing about that, and part of the thing that I would just say about how we work, it's hard work. Hard work. It's not a 3-hour songwriting session and we're done in time for lunch. You know what I mean? We came in early. That's one of the first things we did. And we had referenced the song Wonderwall, right? I don't know if you know that tune, right?
Yeah, of course.
Well, we were looking for movements. Like that song has basically 4 different hooks, and that's what I was trying to get for us. Like, you know, okay, well, if we can get an A with a melodic hook, a B with another payoff, you know what I mean? It's,
so that the interest keeps building,
you know,
as the song progresses.
And that was sort of the exercise in Judson and I starting to work together, where I would have kind of had a producer's hat on, because we weren't considering it a co-project yet. You know what I mean? And still, the way we look at it is kind of unorthodox. You know, I'm still here to be like Shannon Forrest presents Judson McKinney. You know what I mean? That's it. But it's definitely a shared everything we write and think about and musically create. There is that chemistry that you're talking about.
And basically what we had done is, you know, in following sort of the idea of Wonderwall, we'd created this sort of British sounding, folky sounding thing that was a tad sleepy, but once we got the idea for Last Man Standing, we're like, oh, I played the same stuff that sounded sleepy a bit on bass, and all of a sudden, it ain't sleepy no more.
Right.
You know, it's you're going in like, you know, down a street of you know, some bad part of London or something, and it's not Wonderwall.
Well, and I'll tell you something really fascinating about this, but it again, it goes back to why I stopped everything I was doing. Once we started working together, I did less and less and less outside work till there was no more outside work to a part that it was perilous for me. You know what I mean? But it was worth it. I can see, what this can do. That song, we had an executive meeting at a high level industrial place where we want our music to be. I'm not looking at music industry as the necessary vessel. That's fine. We're going to do that. You know what I mean? But as far as getting your music on people's ears, video games, other partnerships with other things, you want to touch that market base. It's a bigger window than even the delivery system for music, right? Well, the people that heard our track first, that one, the Last Man Standing, and we've got a lot of really positive things. That song's just laying in the wings, waiting to hit a giant target, and we're just waiting for that industrial component to complete what it's already set in motion. But they thought we were from the UK, right? So you know what I mean? So back to that original intent. And what I met about this guy, I mean, I have compared him to Jagger. There's a bit of John Lennon about him. There's a bit of Paul McCartney about him. There's a bit, all these types of people. There's a bit of that in him. But yeah, that track essentially comes down to groove. You know what I mean? Like that song, if you hear that and all that percussion, which was his early on, Judson was like, I don't want to put layers and layers of music and, guitars and keyboards. How much percussion can we put into these things,
Well, yeah, I because, Shannon is who he is, and the touch that he has, with drums and percussion, I was like, well, let's build our production hooks not on, lush studio tricks, but on percussive instruments.
Yeah. And we're constantly going back. I mean, for what it's worth, my right hand and his right hand, that natural thing. And then as a result, his groove with the vocal delivery and the sibilance and attack of his voice, they're like this, you know what I mean? So we put a heavy emphasis on just get that as many times as we can. If you can get that in the speaker on repeat, it's engaging.
Yeah, I've referred to that, as many points of energy.
Feel, groove,
There's a word that I don't use very often in music. There's a primal. It's funny. I was just talking to a lady who wrote a book on Yoko Ono yesterday, and we're talking about primal screaming with John. There's a primal side to this stuff. I mean, Liberty Bells, So True, Glammy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going, this is like Mott the Hoople meets Sweet meets 2023.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Tell me about before we go into Liberty Bells, So True. Tell me about that one.
That was another title where Shannon said, hey man, can you come up with something that's like, where it's like, you're so true, And then I started noticing everybody on social media is like, so true, girl, so true. And he really wanted me to take this sort of hard line angle on the sarcasm, which I don't think I ended up doing. It's a little bit more, maybe the feeling of it's a little bit more ambiguous, but it almost feels more menacing that way, I think.
Well, the beauty of that process is that, I was very reluctant to participate in writing. I had been doing more and more of it when I met Judson, but when we met, it was just like, all right, well, I just got to get over that and just really apply myself. And so when I would bring something to the room, I desperately hope that he's going to bend it away from my own understanding of the idea. And that's when you get something really unique, is when you truly get a collaboration where there's a particular point of entry into a thought, but now it's affected by two or more points of view, and then it becomes unique. But there's a couple of really cool things. If you got some, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, we're inundated with so much stuff, they're talking about possible conscription in Europe and World War III and God knows what. And so I think the idea of that song is just kind of like, so true. It's like, hold my beer while I watch the nuclear, explosion, right?
And one more thing, dig this, about that track that's remarkable, okay? we don't record to a click track, right? We start writing, and if we get a feel on something, I'll go play it on the drums while he maybe plays guitar with me on the basic first riff idea. And then I'll go into that and I'll listen to that drum and I'll make a loop of whichever measures feel really good, you know? And then as we write, you know, we use that as what I call like post-it notes. And so I'll create 3 minutes of enough of that groove. And then we write the song to that. Now, we wrote that song before Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay. That had not happened yet. One of the remarkable things, and this has happened with my work with Judson and our time together, so many times I'm tired of it. It's like, all right. I'm listening. I'm continuing to work because you keep showing me these
synchronicities is what I'm talking about. He's talking about these synchronicity moments.
So the choices in there, and the bridge was the last thing we inserted, which kind of has this Bowie-esque thing where he goes into this spoken word commentator, you know what I mean? The voice of all this stuff. Well, on one speaker, right, I grabbed some audio that's Stalin. Stalin is one speaker. This is before Russia invaded Ukraine, right? Ho Chi Minh is in the other one, right? And then there's a literal German parade march with tanks and shit in there that, again, across this tempo that is not set on anything that we did other than feel, that fucking parade from 1938 stays in sync with our track for 16 measures. You know what I mean? And that was one of the first instances of what the fuck is happening. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's a really cool thing, you know?
A year before the war. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Tell me about Liberty Bells. I used to have a music teacher who used to say, he says that it's real music. I said, what's real music? He says, all the stuff here on the radio. But the real music is the stuff that really grabs you, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing about this project, guys, that, you know, I was so pleasantly surprised. And when I was getting here late, just speeding, trying to get here on time to my house, I'm going, I don't want to miss this. This is so good. Liberty Bells.
Yeah.
Tell me about that one.
Well, it's a song that I started writing in the car. I often write in a mantra-like way when I'm driving, and that Liberty Bells in the pouring rain, you know, that just kept going on and on in my head. And gradually, just as I would drive, I would start to fill in different lyrics. And so I pretty much brought that intact to Shannon's studio. And, you know, we just fleshed out a production for it. You know, we added a chorus, which is really kind of like a refrain. And we, you know, we added some muscle in the guitars, and, you know,
that was a particularly great, somewhere down the line, and we're going to go back in and retitle some of these live videos so it's not such a deep dive, but there's an extremely uncomfortable 6 hours of us finding that chorus. Like, well, it's got to have a chorus. It's got to release, you know? So there's two things. One of the first things we did in my room here, I didn't know what to play. He was playing me that song on a Telecaster and singing it. And so I just played Four on the Floor. That was the first thing that made sense. It's like, I'm just going to play along with him while we document this song as one we possibly will work on, right? Well, that vocal is the vocal he sang in that room when I was just playing bass drums. So we made that record around that vocal performance, because when you hear that vocal performance, those verses are just, it's epic communication level. You know what I mean? It's so we didn't touch that. We inserted a chorus, you know, we created that thing, and then we just made the record around it, you know?
Hope you enjoyed that. Judson McKinney and the Wanderers. You'll get all the information at the very top of the description. Also, there's links to the clips of the entire interview with both Shannon and Judson, where you can see them right now. It's all available on our sister site, Rocky Street Book. Make sure you join our newsletter. The link is at the very top of the description. If you want to give a donation to the channel, there's a PayPal donation. You can join our Patreon, get early access to our interviews. And of course, comment on our videos, share our videos, subscribe to the channel, and like them as well. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music.